delighted to be joined by my guest. She is known as Roaming Millennial. She is a YouTuber and host over at CRTV. You can find her on Twitter at Roaming Mill. Roaming, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Now, I want to get into gun control because we were talking about it. I was talking about it with Alex before the break. This March for Our Lives event over the weekend, obviously a big voter recruitment drive for Democrats. You know, less than 10% of the attendees are actually children. But we've seen polls over the past 48 hours which show this lead in terms of the House race for Congress in the midterms has narrowed to the point where the Democrats had a 15-point lead back in October to a 5-point lead now. I think this is going to backfire spectacularly, this gun control narrative, because it might force Republicans to rally and to get out and vote in the midterms, whereas before they had no real reason to do so. Obviously, the Democrats have this big anti-Trump narrative. That's their entire, they've basically got no policy platform, but they're trying to make it a referendum against Trump. They're active. They've got people out. The Republicans don't really have that energy. They don't really have that momentum. But I think they're going to get it out of this insane crusade against the Second Amendment. Now we have the New York Times op-ed, repeal the Second Amendment. We got the protest signs, you know, at the event, ban all guns. I think this is going to backfire massively against Democrats if they continue to follow this narrative over the course of the next 6-7 months. Do you agree?
I completely agree. And if you just look at what we saw happen after the CNN town hall event with Dana Lash, her getting berated, same thing with Marco Rubio, we've seen an increase, an exponential soar in the amount of people just Googling how to join the NRA, how to support the NRA. And you have people like me who have always been pro-Second Amendment, but have never really, I guess, taken this as one of their most important or most passionate issues. I joined the NRA after that interview thing because I just felt that I had no idea how anti-Second Amendment a lot of people were. And I think there's tons of people out there who are feeling the same way right now. Every time Democrats push for more gun control legislation, we see there's a rise in people buying guns because there actually is, I think, a legitimate fear among a lot of people that this is going to lead to more bans on things like AR-15s, the boogeyman that actually is no different than a lot of other regular rifles that I guess look less scary. But I think it is a dangerous thing for people on the left to be doing right now because gun owners are some of the most galvanized, most passionate voters in the U.S. So trying to target them so fiercely and trying to, I guess, demonize an organization that has around 5 million members in it is just not a good idea.
Yeah, and it's like, don't interrupt the enemy when they're making a mistake. It's like I've just said before the break, we should be supporting the Parkland students. We should be amplifying their voice when they get up and say ban all guns. You know, you probably saw the speech from one of them where she said, you know, we'll take an inch, then we'll take a mile regarding the bump stock ban. They're openly coming out and now saying, yes, of course, the true agenda is to confiscate your guns, is to repeal the Second Amendment. I wouldn't interrupt them when they're making that mistake. Also, you know, Cernovich made this point earlier. Don't argue with teenagers. It's like it's really bad optics to be arguing and pestering teenagers constantly. I think we should support them. I think that it's backfiring massively. And whereas conservative Republicans were so pessimistic about losing the House, you know, just a few months back, these polls show it's narrowing. It's narrowing to probably within the margin of error. This is massive. I think this is a massive strategic error on their part, and I don't think we should interrupt them in doing it. The other angle, which I'll throw to you on, is, you know, within this narrative of gun confiscation, we got the New York Times op-ed today. Never do they talk about the consequences of the final solution of enacting gun confiscation. Roaming, we got 70 million American gun owners who own around 300 million guns. What might the consequences be if just 1% of those gun owners resist giving up their weapons? That's never part of the conversation, is it?
Well, I think exactly. And you always hear these protesters who are so passionate about, you know, we'll take it from your cold dead hands, fine. And we've actually seen people with those sorts of signs at the March for Our Lives rally. I don't know how they think they're going to do that, right? I mean, you have this group of people who are by nature ideologically opposed to gun ownership, trying to say that they're coming after the gun owners. With what? With super citizen voting power? That's just not going to work. I mean, and when you have, I think, as many people as you do in the United States who are so fiercely protective of their right to self-defense, and you have these people saying these things, like ban all guns, repeal the Second Amendment, we need to try mandatory confiscation procedures. I think that's just going to scare a lot of people, and it's going to make gun sales go up. And I think we are seeing Republicans being galvanized around this issue. And it's too bad, because I think at the end of the day, they've really politicized this tragedy, this Parkland shooting tragedy, which I think has really highlighted a lot of faults in law enforcement, right? I mean, we have these sheriff's office that ignored different calls, did nothing when they knew this person was a threat. We have the FBI who is ignoring tips, several tips about a possible shooter. They do nothing. There are actual real policy problems that have been highlighted in this terrible shooting. And instead of focusing on those and the solutions that may actually be able to prevent things like this happening in the future, they've turned the entire NRA into this boogeyman, which is an unrelated topic. It's not going to help this, not going to help prevent things like this in the future. And I think it's just an obfuscation of the actual problems.
Well, exactly. And I mean, David Hogg probably already is the gun salesman of the year. As he said, the
Right.
anecdotal evidence, AR-15s flying off the shelves. The Google searches right after the March for Life were buy AR-15, that spiked. NRA membership, that spiked. So it is a rallying point for Republicans, which may not have existed before this whole narrative began last month after the Parkland shooting. But switching gears, you made a video about fat shaming, which is one of my favorite topics, because, this whole fat pride movement really gets to the core of how personal responsibility in our culture is being completely eviscerated. There was a rotund comedian by the name of Sophie Hagen, who got angry at a cancer charity for pointing out that obesity is the second biggest cause of cancer. Just explain what happened with that.
Right. So Sophie Hagen, whose Twitter account is just a treasure trove of lulz, she had a real issue with this cancer research charity who does nothing except try to raise awareness for public health concerns, just trying to let people know that, hey, obesity, I think it's the second largest contributor of preventable cancers after smoking, right? This is a serious public health concern. And especially if you're living in somewhere like the UK or Canada, this is actually an issue that taxpayers need to be aware of, because guess what? When these people have these health-related issues, we're all paying for it, right? I mean, it's everybody's burden at that point. And for some reason, for this activist, she took that as a personal slight against fat people. And I think she actually tried to insinuate that the Cancer Research Society trying to raise awareness about obesity-related cancers is more damaging than the actual obesity-related cancers.
Oh no, I've got a quote. I've got the quote here. This is what she said. Society viewing fatness as a negative thing kills more people than obesity-related diseases. That's literally what she tweeted. Okay, it doesn't. So 2 billion people worldwide suffer health problems from just being overweight, not even obesity. You've got 4 million people a year dying due to illnesses related to being overweight. It's doubled. Obesity has doubled since 1980. Obviously, that's complete BS. How helpful is it to women, given that this is now basically a feminist movement, to encourage them to follow a lifestyle that literally kills them?
It's not helpful at all. And I'm really having a hard time understanding why this has become a feminist issue, why this is something that social justice has taken arms about. And I think it all stems from the fact that these women are insecure about themselves, right? And they want to feel beautiful. And part of the authoritarian feminist, I guess, marching style is to take your feelings and mandate them onto other people, right? So now you have to say that fatness is beautiful. You can't tell us that it's unhealthy because we want to feel good about ourselves, and all of those facts. It's just it's uncomfortable to hear. I think that's the only reason why this is being talked about.
Okay, we're heading into a break. We will be back with Roaming Millennial on the other side. This is the Alex Jones Show Live. Don't go away. We'll be back. We are back, and we are joined by Roaming Millennial. You can find her on YouTube by simply searching for Roaming Millennial. She's got a big YouTube channel. She's also a host with CRTV. Roaming, obviously, your demographic on YouTube is, I presume, quite young. Mine is concentrated in the age range between 18 and 35. Now, you contrast that with Fox News, whose average medium time, prime time viewer is 68 years old. They're literally dying out. Not to rag on the elderly, but their audience is literally dying out. But, I've never been invited ever, ever to appear on any Fox News show, any Fox Business show or whatever. The left, as we talked about earlier, recruits people through exploiting tragedies, especially young people, with this whole March for Life thing. Don't you think it's time? Don't you think it's way overdue that establishment conservatives, specifically media outlets, need to reach out and energize their political brand by attracting a younger audience? Because it's just not happening right now.
Absolutely. And I think there's been a real problem with the conservative movement for the past 30, 40 years in that they have the worst branding. They have terrible outreach, right? And I think the reason why the left is so popular among young people right now in mainstream culture is not because their ideas are better. It's not because their policies bring more improvements to people's lives. It's because they're flashier, right? They're more attractive. They're more charismatic looking. They seem more compassionate. All these good things that young people want to see. The left is great at packaging their ideas like that. And I think that's what conservatives need to get a whole lot better at. And when I look at places like Fox News, I enjoy watching Fox News, but I do wish that they had more of an effort to reach younger viewers, right? I mean, we have entire networks that were originally dedicated to youth entertainment, like MTV. Now, essentially, they've become these giant propaganda mills, right? And I disagree with that, but at the same time, it's dang effective. And we just don't see conservatives putting that amount of effort into connecting to young people, which is too bad.
And yeah, I mean, you have it to a certain extent on YouTube, which is why I joked to the New York Times last year, YouTube is a right-wing safe space. Obviously, they've still got things like the Young Turks, they've got the comedy shows, but in terms of individual personalities, the right, or you could call it the centrist crowd, really do dominate on YouTube to a great extent. And that's why they're so paranoid about YouTube from my perspective. But again, in terms of that establishment Fox News style brand, there's no outreach effort, which is the way I see it, which is going to cost them given how the demographics are going. But I want to switch gears. We've got about 7 minutes left. Have you got something to add to that?
Well, what I would like to see going forward is just to see a greater, I guess, partnership between these establishment Republican or establishment conservative outlets and the new younger generation of conservative commentators and activists, right? Because I think at the end of the day, we may be ideologically aligned, but our demographics are very different, and we need to sort of consolidate people together into kind of pursuing things that are universally conservative, right? That's how we get measures actually changed and policies actually implemented, people actually elected, is that we all need to kind of get on the same page in terms of like what politicians we want to see, what kind of policies conservatives want to focus on. And I think there needs to be, I guess, the sort of coalescence among conservatives like that.
Exactly, and this is where the energy is. There's no energy in National Review Online anymore. It's a dead duck. I mean, they need to get over it and move on. It's quite ridiculous that the whole CPAC crowd and all that. They get so triggered by anyone who complains about a potential speaker or a potential guest. They cancel them imminently. I mean, they're so paranoid. They're so precious. They need to get over themselves. Let's move on, though. You made a video about the alt-right. In fact, there's a meme, which I posted today, which you featured in your alt-right video, which shows the alt-right and social justice warriors and how their beliefs are basically the same, or at least a mirror image of each other, when it comes to race, segregation, views on society. And I've made this point many times. I'll flash that meme up when this goes up on YouTube. The alt-right and the far left, they need each other. The mainstream media needs the alt-right because they use it as a bogeyman to smear ordinary conservatives. And, you look at the alt-right's presence on YouTube in physical real life, there are more cameras at a Richard Spencer event than actual attendees. Their YouTube presence is pathetic in comparison to people like you and more centrist libertarian types. It's not even there. It's barely there. It's pathetic. I make videos attacking the alt-right. The alt-right hates me. They hate you, obviously, because a lot of them are virulent racists. You had the right-wing watch attack on you. Even though they attack you, they hate you, you attack them, still it was, white supremacy figured out how to become YouTube famous. So
right, nice picture of me there.
What is it with this media environment where we can bash the alt-right all day? I can literally put it in my profile, anti-alt-right. They hate me, I attack them, and yet still we're both alt-right. Isn't that an interesting alliance between the far left and the mainstream media when it comes to the alt-right?
Absolutely. Like you said, they do need each other. They feed off of each other. And I think when it comes to the mainstream media's understanding of the alt-right, they don't actually know what the alt-right is. They just kind of see the alt-right as any racist boogeyman, right? So it doesn't matter that you and I speak out against the alt-right, are very ideologically different than the alt-right, because we're not a fan of social justice or their own form of identity race-based politics, we're there for alt-right. And it's funny because I think if they actually understood what the alt-right believes when it comes to their racial identitarianism and racial tribalism, they would actually see that, oh, hang on a second, they're exactly like Black Lives Matter, but for white people. And I think that might be sort of an interesting little bit of cognitive dissonance for them if the time ever did come. But you're right, these two groups, if they weren't around making waves at each other, they eventually would disappear because they'd have nothing to complain about.
And I mean, that's the point. Whenever I get called alt-right in the media, it's like, yeah, you don't know what the alt-right is, do you? It's not anyone who disagrees with you, okay? It's a very specific subsection of people whose views are completely abhorrent, and you know where to find them on certain websites, which is the complete opposite of everyone else. But they lump us in. It's a useful tool to smear, more mainstream conservatives with, which is why they do it, which is why the mainstream loves the alt-right, and the alt-right loves the mainstream because they wouldn't otherwise have an audience. But we got a few minutes left with Roaming Millennial. Social media censorship. Obviously, we've seen this Facebook algorithm change broadly affecting conservatives more than left-wing websites. We've seen YouTube targeting political content. Has this impacted you at all in terms of your YouTube output?
Well, I mean, definitely I've had issues with demonetization. I've even had I've had to appeal them, and I have gotten some approved, but I think that's been going on for a long time. But regarding this Facebook thing, I actually just got off a call with one of the people at CRTV saying that we're going to need to, I guess, reevaluate how we do things, because the sad fact of the matter is Facebook is targeting like you any call to action where you might want to direct someone to a third-party site or article where there's more conservative content. They're actually cracking down on that, and they're not favoring that anymore. And so it is hard, and we're going to need to adapt. And I always struggle with, is it just worth leaving it? Because I mean, I'm personally not on Facebook. My show has a Facebook page, but I'm not on Facebook. I mean, I am on YouTube, and they have their own leftist policies. And it's hard because on the one hand, I don't want to support these companies. I don't agree with what they're doing. But on the other, this is where the eyes are, right? This is where the viewership is. So, I mean, right now, I kind of see these companies as this necessary evil if I want to actually connect with people and be able to have this discussion on a large platform. But long term, I'm hoping that alternatives arise where we were able to just leave these guys behind.
Well, I mean, my attitude is just ride it until the wheels fall off. And, I think they are starting to fall off. I got a Facebook video, for example. I was getting more views on those videos than the ones on YouTube. As of this algorithm change, that's been slightly amended. So we'll see how that goes. But that is the main threat in terms of censorship from my perspective. It's not outright bans, it's them tweaking the algorithm in the background. So suddenly your audience dwindles away and you can't really prove that they've done anything. I think that's the main threat going forward. But in the final minute, Roaming Millennial, yeah, you want to add to that? Go ahead.
Well, I mean, it's essentially a shadow ban, right? So you have all these conservative channels who maybe are thinking, is my audience just not interested in what? But actually, they're not even being notified of your videos. They're not showing up on your feeds. It's actually a pretty smart way of doing things. You can ban people without actually having to ban them, and they don't know.
Exactly. Now we got about a minute left. Tell people where they can find you on Twitter and YouTube and your plans going forward.
Sure. So you can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/roaming millennial. You can also find me on Twitter at roaming mill. I pretty much live on Twitter, so definitely check me out there to stay updated with what I'm doing. And I'm on CRTV at crtv.com/roaming. We got 3 episodes of Uncensored a week. And going forward, I will be speaking in Arizona on the 21st of April. So if you're in the area, be sure to come say hi.
Okay, there goes Roaming Millennial. Be sure to check her out. She's got a fabulous YouTube channel. Check it out today. Roaming, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Please click the big red button to subscribe. It really helps me when you do that. And click the bell to allow notifications so you never miss a new video.